Hello out there, and welcome to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com, which is the Gamecock site on Rivals. I'm Caleb Alexander, joined by Alan Cole, and today we're going to very quickly preview the matchup with Vanderbilt this weekend. The Gamecocks are looking to get bowl eligible, sitting at 5-3 right now. And really their best opportunity left this season to get that sixth win, although I still think they have a shot to get a couple more than that, even though, we're at the point of the season where they're coming off their worst performance of the season, probably. Definitely against the worst performance against the worst team on the schedule thus far. And any of you that have ever played team sports, that stretch between a poor performance and the next game feels excruciatingly long. And even people that follow this program, I'm sure this week felt a little bit longer than that 4-week stretch where they kind of had things rolling. So let's we usually do start with some recruiting. I will have the full weekly recruiting wrap up on the site later today, featuring a little bit of info on Jaden Ball, who is a 2024 four-star linebacker that was supposed to announce today, but it seems like he's delaying that decision a little bit, which is probably good because I think he would have ended up at Tennessee if he would have announced today. And then Nicholas Harbor, which is the remaining biggest target in the 2023 class left, is setting up his official visits for December. So he's gone to Michigan and South Carolina already. He's got 3 more. He's going to use all 3, it sounds like, in December, and then kind of make his decision from there. So unlikely that he'll sign in the early signing period. It'll probably be a February situation unless something dramatic happens between now and then. But yeah, more info on the weekly recruiting wrap up later today. So look out for that on GamecockScoop.com. All right, let's talk Vandy, Alan. And, there's not to disrespect the opponent or whatever, but this is a game that South Carolina certainly has a talent advantage, although we're going to talk about a couple key players on Vanderbilt. But for the first time all season, I feel like the press conference on Tuesday and Wednesday, instead of focusing on the upcoming opponents, still was trying to get some questions answered about what went down in Missouri last week. So what were some of those kind of key questions that continue to linger after the 23-10 loss last week?
Honestly, kind of a little bit of everything. That was one of those performances we talked about as Sunday, but that was one of those performances where you kind of have to question everything. I mean, I know the defense didn't get completely shelled in the second half, but they definitely did in the first half, which you mentioned. Obviously, the offense goes without saying. Special teams didn't make a big play. It was kind of just a little bit of everything. There were questions about some of the energy on the sideline, and Eric Douglas saying they didn't have that same energy as they had. There was questions about the perimeter. Devontae Reed said it himself. They were horrible on the perimeter. I wrote a story about kind of locking down the perimeter this week. There were questions about stopping quarterback runs, which they didn't do last week, and they're going to see plenty of tomorrow night in Nashville between Mike Wright and A.J. Swan. And, of course, we had Marcus Satterfield in the building on Wednesday. There were questions about his play calling. There were questions about Jaheim Bell. We did talk to Jaheim on Tuesday as well. I believe that press coverage video is on Gamecock Scoop now. It was just kind of a little bit of everything, unpacking a truly terrible performance last week from South Carolina.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm sure the staff and the players are very ready to wash that bad taste out of their mouth, and probably ready to move on and talk about some other things. You mentioned Lloyd, so we got an updated injury report last night from Shane Beamer on Carolina Calls. Sounds like for the most part, pretty much everyone is healthy, but it was a little concerning if you've been paying attention to the way that Shane Beamer typically rolls out an injury report. He's never, unless someone's out for like several weeks, he never out and out says there's no way that they're going to play. But he gave a lot of caveats whenever he mentioned Lloyd. And at this point, I would expect him to be either very, very limited, like he was last week, or perhaps, take the whole week off and they go a different direction there. We are hearing a little bit of some rumblings that they might try to get creative with Jaheim Bell again, which they did earlier in the season.
Wouldn't that be funny? After all the stuff last week, just come out the first series, Jaheim Bell and Wildcat.
Hey, honestly, sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease or whatever, right? Like if I'm Satterfield and Beamer and, want to keep Bell around next year, perhaps there's something to just, hey, let's get you the ball however we can this week.
Yeah, and I do think that you do bring up a legitimate point, though. If Marshawn Lloyd, I think we're all in agreement he's not going to be a bell cow this week. He's not going to do what he was doing earlier in the year. Even if he plays, it's going to be on a snap count or a pitch count, whatever you call that. Where else are the carries coming from? Because Juju McDowell in between the teeth of the defense doesn't work, and Satterfield kind of said as much this week. He's 5'7" going into the teeth of an SEC defense that's just not going to play. Haven't seen that much of Christian Beal-Smith this year. I don't know. Is this the Dante Miller week? I doubt it, but they do have other running backs they haven't really used all year. I'm not really sure where the carries are how the carries get divided up if Lloyd can't take his usual 15 or whatever.
Well, and this kind of, not to get too down this road again, because we could do it at every single podcast, but this goes back to, are you calling the best offense for your personnel? Because, yeah, Marshawn Lloyd can do certain things in the run game that Juju McDowell can't. But we've also seen Juju McDowell can be an effective runner if you get him to the edge and get him in space. So I do think he needs to be a part of the run game. But, yeah, you don't put the 5'7", 170-pound guy right up the middle, which I believe they did on a 3rd and short last week.
It was a 3rd and 2. And, of course, that didn't work because why would it work?
So yeah, I think you change the strategy a little there, and then maybe we do see Bell take some of those up the middle carries, which, I mean, he's a big guy to tackle. Early in the season when they were giving them those carries, it also felt like if people kind of went after his ankles or whatever, he usually did go down pretty quick from that first defender. But he's been effective on that little fullback dive here and there throughout the season too.
What about a pitch? What about perimeter stuff? How about a jet motion to Jaheim Bell? They were doing that a little bit. There were some option looks with him, I think in the Georgia State game going all the way back to week 1. You get him with a head of steam going around the edge and you get his momentum going. We talked about how, he's a big body. He's tough to bring down. And once he has the head of steam, and there's something there too. You don't have to just run it between the tackles because that's where you're missing Lloyd.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, at some point it felt in the early part of the season, it felt like giving those carries to Bell was taking away carries from a blossoming Lloyd. But if you don't have a healthy Lloyd, then I think there is even more reason to maybe get a little bit more experimental in the grab bag. So we'll see how that plays out. It won't surprise me to see Bell take some carries this week, or them to try to shoehorn him into the game.
Over under Jaheim Bell touches between running 6.5 between running and receiving.
I was going to put it at 5. So
over, I guess you're saying.
I mean, I was going to put the line at 5, so I don't know. It's. I think that line's about right. I'll say under because I just haven't gotten.
You got to see it to believe it, kind of thing.
I'll say I haven't gotten any confidence that they can find a way to consistently. I do think that they on the first couple of drives they'll probably try to shoehorn it to him, but we'll see if that continues throughout.
You get it. You want Jaheim. He's on the field here. That kind of thing.
Right. Obviously, Spencer Rattler is going to have to play a cleaner game than he has through most of the season with his 5 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, I believe. And he's also lost several fumbles at this point, so really needs to play a clean game there because Vanderbilt, while they do have a talent disadvantage, they're opportunistic. They're not bad on defense. I mean, they've taken some pretty hefty blowouts here and there, but they've played a little bit better as of late as well. They only lost by 3 points to a Missouri team that just beat South Carolina. And then defensively, like you said, South Carolina's tended to struggle with the quarterback run. They struggled last week with the quarterback run. So they'll have to kind of lock in on that as we'll see a little bit of AJ Swan and
Mike Wright
throughout. And then they have a pretty good running back in Ray Davis as well. Their offensive line.
Shepard on the outside, too, receiver.
Yep. Their offensive line is solid in the pass blocking. Like they've only given up 8 sacks all year, but they aren't getting a crazy push on defensive lines for the running game or anything. Like South Carolina's defensive line should have some opportunities to sort of impose their will on this game, but they're smart about how they protect the quarterback. They don't give up a ton of sacks. I think the defensive line and the edges are going to need to affect the quarterback in third and long situations. And it may look kind of like Texas A&M where you don't have, a 7-sack game or whatever they had against Kentucky. But, if you're getting some pressure, if you're making the ball come out a little bit early and all that, then I think you're doing your job there.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's complementary football. It's kind of what they weren't doing against Missouri, but have done at different points this year. It's winning on first and second down. You get Vanderbilt into some of these obvious passing down situations, some of these situations where quarterback run might not be as much in the playbook or even an option. And you should be able to let your talented defensive linemen, I'm specifically talking about guys like Zach Pickens, guys like Jordan Birch, Tonka Hemingway, whatever, take over the game a little bit. I think I don't want to say that's what you need, but I mean, 0 sacks last week. And I know pressure matters, and if you can affect the quarterback, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to get him down, but 0 sacks is still 0 sacks. There were a lot of points in that game where a sack on a third down. I think Missouri converted 6 of 8 third downs in the first half. Could have changed things early, and it never came.
Yeah, and they're going to have to sort of force Vandy into some negative plays on first and second down. So right now, Vanderbilt's averaging 4.8 yards per rushing play when you take away sacks, which is not bad. Carolina's allowing 4.7. So, if that trend continues, then it could be sort of one of those low-scoring, methodical games where Vanderbilt strings together a few drives, maybe for field goals or a touchdown here and there, and we have another sort of ugly game. You talked a little bit about the players talking about energy. I think that's going to be a factor here. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to a game at Vanderbilt, but it's not a typical SEC environment.
Have you? I have not.
I haven't, but I mean, you can tell just
I've seen, yeah.
And so you're not going to be able to play up on that energy. It also looks like you might have a little bit of a sleepy, rainy sort of game yesterday or tomorrow. So yeah, I think you're going to have to find within yourself how to get up for a game like that. I mean, maybe it's the promise of bowl eligibility for the seniors. Maybe it's just getting the sour taste out of your mouth from last week. But whatever it is, you're going to have to find that internal motivation because you're not going to get it from the crowd.
I sound like a broken record, but this is a game where you have to start fast. We say that most weeks. We saw what happened last week when they didn't start fast. They were down 17-0. They'd only run, I think, 11 plays. It was Shane Beamer said on Tuesday. If you start badly, if Vanderbilt scores first, if Vanderbilt can play from ahead, because Vanderbilt, I mean, Clark Lee as a defensive coach, he was at Notre Dame. He was a defensive coordinator there. He's coached linebackers in the past. And you can tell, like, this Vanderbilt defense, they tackle well. They fly to the ball. I really don't think this is a week for bubble screens, but that's a separate conversation, the way Vanderbilt tackles in space. But point being, you fall behind. I don't think it's a given you can pull that back because Vanderbilt does skew towards defense in terms of strengths. They do force turnover as well. And this isn't a game where you're going to be able to get into a shootout and just hope you get the ball last. So, yeah, you're going to have to start quick, and that probably involves, let's face it, scoring a touchdown early.
Yeah, and, this is another week where special teams or defense can make some big plays to kind of take some of that pressure off the offense because we have seen when the offense gets forced to consistently win the ball game, it just hasn't happened. And, I don't know that it's fair to expect that to happen now. Although if it were to happen, this is your best opportunity left on the schedule for sure. It was also announced this week, I forgot to mention this in the injuries, that wide receiver Corey Rucker is going to have season-ending foot surgery. He tweeted that he had surgery the other day and everything went successful. And he also tweeted that he plans on being back next year, which we were kind of wondering, there were some rumors that he was leaving the team and all this stuff, and we were trying to figure out what was actually going on. But it sounds like it's just this injury, and really he's never gotten his footing, for lack of a better term. throughout this season. I mean, he did have the one long touchdown.
He tweeted it, or maybe it was Instagram, but 100% success rate this year. He has one catch, one for a touchdown.
Yeah, that's right. I do think he can definitely be a factor next year if he can get healthy. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. He won't be
Beamer
back.
said he should be ready for spring ball.
Yeah.
And speaking of guys out, the only other guy who's been ruled out this week is Terrell Dawkins. We kind of knew that was coming. He isn't quite bad. He hasn't played since the Charlotte game. And at that point, Beamer said he'd be out about 6 weeks. And this is 6 weeks in Charlotte. So you're still tracking about what we thought it was. We'll see if he plays against Florida next week. Beamer said he did practice this week. So it sounds like that's on schedule, but he's still not going to play Saturday.
Yeah. Another big factor is it sounds like Nick Emenwari and Devontae Reed will both be healthy for this one. That little 3-man rotation of him, DQ Smith, and Emenwari was working pretty well there in that 4-game winning streak. And we saw that Missouri really exploited the edges when Reed and Emenwari were both out for stretches of that game. They also exploited him a little bit in the passing game. So that'll be good if both those guys are 100% this week.
Brad Johnson too didn't play last week. Speaking of the edges and linebacker that would help you set the edges, he did not play last week. Bieber said he should be going to go tomorrow. They're pretty healthy on defense right now, it sounds like, other than Terrell Dawkins.
Right. And like you said, according to Chris Lee, who is the publisher at bandysports.com on Rivals, he did a little write-up for us that we do every week called View from the Other Side. You can check out on GamecockScoop.com. According to him, the backup, Mike Wright, or not backup, the 1A, 1B, runs a 10.8 in the 100 meters. So, true track speed. And we saw last week from a quarterback that does not have true track speed that the perimeters can be a problem if South Carolina isn't kind of playing their role when it comes to the zone read and stuff. A lot of times you would have someone crash down and not have someone there, or have someone there a step late. I know Perry McCarty, who does his weekly film session review of the game, pointed out a play where Emenwari actually hit a decent play, but it was 3rd and 2. And the quarterback pulled it, and he got there just a hair too late because he hesitated on the run fake and ended up getting a first down by a few inches or whatever. So just got to be more decisive and play your role when it comes to playing the option well.
Yeah, and I do think, I don't know what the quarterback snap breakdown is going to be, but Mike Wright, he does have wheels. Clayton White was talking about he had an 87-yard touchdown run against Hawaii earlier this year. He's got legs. He can do the zone read stuff. He gets to the edges, which we talked about South Carolina struggled with. I do think you're going to see both quarterbacks in this game for Vanderbilt. Again, I don't know how that splits. I don't know if that's run packages just for Wright or whatever, but Vanderbilt's, you start trying to carve out a path for Vanderbilt to win this football game. Just playing scenarios it's probably going to involve quarterback running and both quarterbacks being involved.
Before we get on into full-on predictions for what happens to this game, how satisfied were you? So we got some media availability from Satterfield on Wednesday. We had multiple players and Beamer talk about Satterfield on Tuesday. And, there's this ongoing, we need to get Jaheim Bell the ball. He's then he gets 9 snaps or whatever he got last week. There's this ongoing, we need to simplify things on offense, all these different trends that we feel like we've been hearing throughout the year. Do we feel like anything's drastically changed from last week to this week, or we're still just kind of waiting on it to come together?
I don't think anything's drastically changed. I don't think anything can drastically change between games 8 and 9, weeks 9 and 10 of the season. I think at this point, we're 2/3 of the way in here. I said this on the Sunday show with you and Pauline, but this is just who they are, I think. I mean, this kind of is what it is. You're going to have to find ways to work around that, especially this week. If you don't have Marshawn Lloyd, that's a big part of who you are. But no, I don't think anything's drastically changed. I think the numbers might look better this week, maybe because you're playing Vanderbilt and you have chances to score. But I also don't think, and I made this point too, I think maybe texting with you or whatever, if they go out and score 35 on Saturday, cool. I don't know, it kind of band-aids it. You feel better for a week. I don't think anyone thinks the offense is fixed if you put 35 on Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah, I mean, and you asked me on the podcast on Sunday, actually, like what could he do at this point to change the narrative with 4 games left in the regular season plus a bowl game or whatever. I might the narrative might already be written, which I know several of you guys on the message board and YouTube comments and whatever are on the fire Satterfield train. We're never, I mean, that's not our job as the media to agree or disagree with that or anything. But there was discussion on Sunday. Was it the Sunday teleconference or Saturday after the game where someone asked him basically, are you looking at personnel changes? And Beamer just said simply, nope. And there was some discussion on like, oh, Beamer's going to protect this guy, blah, blah, blah. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, I'm going to fire him. Like if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen at the end of the season.
Yeah.
I wouldn't make any like grand prognostications. That's not the prognostications about what he is or isn't going to do and whether he is or isn't loyal to Satterfield and all these things. There's still a lot of season left, and he's, unless he like really wants to like turn over the reins to like Kitchens or something like that, which I don't think he's going to do unless they have a really, really terrible showing this week or something. Yeah, it's just not going to happen yet. It'll probably happen at the end of the season. So I tend to think it's unlikely, unless a miracle happens for Satterfield in the offense, that he is retained. But there's still a month to go before we even worry about that.
Yeah, I guess it kind of goes back to people who are calling for Luke Doty right now. I really don't know what that accomplishes. I get it. People want blood. That was pretty bad last week. I don't think there's any reason to do that mid-season. And B, I'm not really sure how much immediate fix you would like. I don't know. If Marcus Satterfield wasn't calling the plays Saturday, they're still not going to come out like Tennessee's offense, like 2019 LSU. You know what I mean? Like it still is what it is. With the personnel, it might look a little bit different. It might be, what's the word I'm looking for? Structured a little bit different, the sequencing, whatever. They're not going to come out and score 50 points with a different play caller. That isn't going to happen.
You can't like throw out the playbook or anything at this point. Like,
right. That's what I'm saying. Like you're
committed to
stuff's too installed. You're 2/3 of the way through the season, plus, a month of fall practices before that. Like this is what it is now.
Well, and I mean, I do think that there is an argument to be made that perhaps the same playbook in a different play caller's hands would go better. Because to me, a lot of the issue is just like some people, some coordinators or whatever, some play callers have that like flow to a game where you feel like they're able to react in real time and just see what's going. And throughout most of the Satterfield era, we've kind of talked about how there just doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to the flow of that.
This is my whole thing. I think I said this in the Sunday show. Maybe I didn't. I've had a lot of conversations this week about Marcus Satterfield. But what are you calling in the first quarter that sets up what you're doing in the fourth quarter? What are you calling on drive 2 that is going to open up a lane on drive 6? Like, I guess that's kind of what I look for in offensive play callers in general. Obviously, you need to get your best players in the field, get them the ball, personnel, blah, blah, blah. We've had that discussion a lot. But sequencing and how are you setting yourself up for success later in the game when the other team inevitably adjusts? That's kind of what you look for in a play caller. I think that's kind of what separates really good play callers, college or the NFL, between ones who aren't as good. And the sequencing is kind of not really there, or at least not. It's hard to see what the general plan is on a week-to-week basis right now, other than just give the ball to Lloyd and hope he does Marshawn Lloyd things.
And to be fair, when he did, I do feel like there was a little bit more creativity off of some of those run calls later in the Kentucky and Texas A&M game.
The reverse, I'll give credit. Yeah. The Jalen Brooks reverses, those are good.
Yeah, and a couple of play action opportunities and stuff. But it was very apparent last week that when the Lloyd run wasn't working, he did not have much of a pivot. Now, to be fair, this is something that I was thinking about the other day. To be fair to him and the team and all of that, Lloyd seemed like he was really trying to gut it out. And maybe you start several of those drives thinking like, okay, Lloyd says he's ready. We're going to be able to kind of do what we do. And then he would run in there for a play or two and then get pulled out. And so now you're like pivoting on the fly and it's third down already or whatever. So I could see that disrupting the rhythm last week of him coming in, coming out, coming in, coming out. But I mean, that's just me trying to give him a little.
Here's my thing with that. Like,
piece off.
Someone asked him what he thought if he could do anything differently from Saturday, would he have? Which is a fair question. And he said, you probably saw this if you watched the presser. His biggest problem or mistake Saturday was they went to what they call rally mode. When they got the ball back down 23-10 after Missouri's last field goal, about 12 minutes on the clock, they went to rally mode, which is where they're just calling quick plays, no huddle, try to move the ball, score. And Satterfield said they should have just stuck with the playbook, done what they were doing. Even if it took 8 minutes to score and there was only 4 minutes left, they just needed to get a touchdown on that drive. And my response to that, and what I'm still kind of confused about, is you think you should have been sticking with what you were doing the first 3.5 quarters and had 10 points. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And B, is your rally mode a 3rd and 18 tunnel screen? No, I'm not trying to be smarmy about that, but like that was the drive where they said they were in rally mode that he wanted back. Is that really what you think? Is that what the rally mode is supposed to look like? And I asked him about the air yards. He didn't really give much of an answer, but that was kind of a confusing answer to me. If we're talking about, how satisfied I am with what I heard Wednesday, or how satisfied should South Carolina fans be? That was a very confusing answer to me.
Yeah. And also, like, the one drive that they scored a touchdown on last week, I guess that was them doing what they wanted to do, but it was kind of a hurry up ish.
Sure, it was less than a minute left and a half. Yeah.
And also they were aided heavily by pass interference and defensive holding and stuff on that drive. But anyway, we will see how it looks this week. I just wanted to take a moment to pump the brakes on like, oh man, he should be fired today.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, right. Like that's just, it's not going to happen. I do wonder, and we'll just talk about this for just a second. Like, do you think South Carolina should continue, whether it's with Satterfield, with whoever they bring in, whatever, should they continue trying to run this like pro style sort of system, which it seems like is attractive to quarterbacks? Like the quarterback recruiting, including picking up Rattler in the transfer portal or whatever, has been excellent since this staff got here. You have several 4 years on campus with Tanner Bailey, and you got Dante Reno coming in 2024 right now. You got a walk-on in Jalen Daniels, who is a very talented guy for a walk-on. Gauthier was a 4-star, I believe. Braden Davis is a underrated, I think, 3-star. So the quarterback room looks great. It seems like a lot of people want to come in and play for this pro-style system, but it's college football, and we see that a lot of the best offenses in college football are not trying to. A lot of the best offenses in the pros right now aren't running a pro-style system anymore. They're playing to their personnel. They're getting their athletes in space and running some sort of like spread concept or almost borderline air raid at times. So yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on just like, should they keep beating their head against this pro style wall because it helps with recruiting, or should they?
I mean, what else helps with recruiting though is winning.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a heavy conversation for the day before a trip to Vanderbilt, but yeah, I do kind of think you need to. It really just get the ball to your best player in space. That's such a beating. You talk about beating your head against the wall. It's such a beat against your head against the wall concept. We say it every week. We see coaches. We see players. We see that really is what it comes down to. The best offenses you can think of ever. I mean, the whole LSU offense in 2019 was, wow, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are really good. Let's throw them the ball in space. And I'm not saying you're going to average 50 points a game or whatever that team did, of course. But that's the whole thing. You watch Tennessee now. They're lining up receivers basically on the sideline right now, all the way across the field. You make the defense defend all 53 yards of the field horizontally. and you're probably going to end up with guys in space. And once a week, Jalen Hyatt's wide open in the end zone because he found space. So yeah, I do think you kind of got to go to the spread and the space stuff more. But that is probably more of an off-season conversation rather than just what needs to happen tomorrow, which is whatever gets you a win on the scoreboard in Nashville.
Yeah. Well, and from a recruiting standpoint, cool. You're getting these quarterbacks in that want to play a pro style, but the wide receivers have not been coming. And we just saw 4-star, South Carolina leading the whole way in his recruitment. In-state guy, Mazio Bennett, choose Tennessee. Why? Because Tennessee's offense is way more fun. That's really what it comes down to. And Jalen Hyatt is a guy from South Carolina that now this isn't on Beamer and Company. The previous staff did not prioritize him. Maybe they don't even land him if they do or whatever. But yeah, it's just we'll talk about that again in the offseason. You're right. But I do think maybe it's time to let a college football team have a college offense.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into predictions. So what do you think is actually going to happen in this game tomorrow? Like we said, it's going to be a little rainy, maybe a little chilly. And we kind of know, we've kind of laid out like who these two teams are.
I think South Carolina just has to find a way. Again, ugly. I don't expect this to light up the scoreboard. You're probably not going to have a very good time watching it if you're a South Carolina fan or a Vanderbilt fan listening to this, which we appreciate. I said 23-17 South Carolina. I don't think that satisfies anyone that much. I don't think it calms any of the questions about the offense. But Vanderbilt has lost 25 straight SEC games for a reason. And it is kind of I can't really pick Vanderbilt to win until I see it. And for all the questions I have about South Carolina, I still think they're the better team here. And they're going to find a way to score enough points on this Vanderbilt defense to win and get bowl eligible. What do you think?
So yeah, I have a similar thing. You don't have them covering the spread though. The spread was
I do not.
7 last time I saw it. I have South Carolina 24, Vanderbilt 13. I do think it's going to be ugly. That looks like a backdoor sort of cover to me, like probably 17-13, and then South Carolina scores late to kind of put it to bed or whatever. But I do expect this one to be sweaty still in the fourth quarter, at least for a little while. It also wouldn't surprise me if South Carolina comes out and just clicks and blows them out either. Like
it'd be extremely South Carolina after last week.
Yeah. But yeah, if I'm going with most likely scenario, I think it's kind of a battle until the fourth quarter, but then South Carolina's talent just kind of wheels their way through. Speaking of that 25 game losing streak to SEC teams, though, I mean, if Vanderbilt does pull it off, that is going to be quite the headline on Sunday that they break that streak against a South Carolina team that at that point will be fully in floundering mode. We will have full national picks on GamecockScoop.com later tonight, actually, because one of the games that we're picking starts at 10 p.m. tonight. So we'll go ahead and have those in this evening. I'll have my weekly recruiting wrap up in this evening. Alan will have his final preview and his predictions and all of that first thing tomorrow morning. And yeah, we'll be hanging out on GamecockScoop.com in the live thread for the game. So come hang out with us there, talk some ball, talk about how much you hate what's happening on offense. Yeah.
We'll be there to answer your questions. I'll be at the press box, whatever Vanderbilt Stadium's called now. I know they got a new sponsor. You will be at home. And yeah, I'll see you guys in Nashville.
All right. Until next time, or till Sunday when we review this game, this has been the GamecockScoop.com podcast. We'll see you later.